the gameplay is loud, which is weird considering I don't actually have audio. Okay, right. Okay, here we go. Right, that should be better now. It's been a month, so I messed up. So, Final Fantasy 15, it's good. It's really good. It's a very weird game. It's kind of linear in an open world setting, but I like it, and it's sold well. But the conversation keeps going back to, does these games make enough money on Xbox for Square to keep putting them on the platform? And that conversation doesn't make any sense because Square Enix is the most incompetent company on the planet when it comes to porting games. And okay, Pixel Slapper, is the audio fixed yet? Because I've changed the settings. Media source, desktop audio. Okay, audio's good. Thank you. Right. So, Square Enix is extremely incompetent when it comes to putting games on Xbox and mainly handling their own money. Final Fantasy 15 was in development for like 11 years. And then when they finally had to announce the game with its release date, they put on a live show. And it was hosted by Greg Miller. And it must have been an expensive event. They put on a live show and they had a release date, and then about 2 weeks went by, and then they delayed it. So they put on a live show for no reason. They worked with Sony on a feature-length CGI film, which is actually quite good. It's a Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive. I enjoyed it, but that film must have cost a lot to make. They also hired a marketing team to make a CGI trailer that was about 5 minutes long that had licensed music in it. And then they worked with a Japanese animation company to make a 6-episode series to help market the game, which worked as a prequel. And they put on all these different events and all these different mini games out and different demos to market Final Fantasy 15, a game that was in development for like 11 years. And then they think porting games to Xbox is like the most of their worries. They just don't know how to handle their own games. Look at Tomb Raider. The first Tomb Raider game in the reboot trilogy cost about $100 million to make. They spent $110 million on marketing. One of the most recognizable names in video games, Lara Croft and Tomb Raider. They felt the need to spend more than the actual production budget on marketing it because they thought people wouldn't know what the hell it is. It's like Square Enix doesn't know what they're doing. They just don't. And it's infuriating because every single time an Xbox fan on Twitter or any form of social media talks about wanting these games on Xbox, people get the whole, oh, maybe the ports aren't worth it. The ports are worth it. It's just Square Enix is extremely incompetent. And I don't care who the hell says it. Square Enix is incompetent. They just don't know what they're doing. And this goes on for years and years and years. And it's like, Final Fantasy VII, the remake, was listed at multiple retailers for Xbox a few years ago. And we don't know if that's ever going to come over to Xbox. And the funny thing is that that game is guaranteed to make money. Final Fantasy VII is an iconic game, so the remake is obviously going to sell. They probably wouldn't even have to market it. They just have to put out a port like they would in the past. Hell, Kingdom Hearts 3 was the first Kingdom Hearts game to come to Xbox. And then they put the remasters for the other games afterwards, about a year and a half afterwards. They do not know what they're doing. Square Enix, as a company, they are extremely incompetent. I don't know, man. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, Square is a very odd duck. I'll put it that way. They're handling especially of Western IPs of their collection, whether it's Deus Ex or Tomb Raider or Soul Reaver or Avengers licensed. I mean, thank goodness Guardians was awesome. Of course, it probably didn't sell that well because nobody knew it was out except word of mouth from you and others in the community. Going like, hey, this game is pretty dang good. You should check it out. And then, lo and behold, it wins a game award for having the best story. I mean, that game's awesome. Killer soundtrack, everything. And not a peep about that game. And then Tomb Raider, like you said, they're like, nobody knows who Lara Croft is. I'm like, are you kidding me? She's like one of the biggest heroines in all of gaming. Anybody who's been around for at least a decade knows who Lara Croft is in the gaming sphere. So that was wild to me. And then their whole deals about timed exclusivity, or okay, the deal is for a year, and then the year comes, it's like, okay, where's the game? And then they just silently never confirm or never say whether they've extended the deal, or if they're just not going to port it, or if it is still coming, or what. And I don't know. It's really weird. And like Bethesda, I mean, before the acquisition by Microsoft, Bethesda had some issues with marketing and choosing placement of their games as well. Like I remember Rage, the first one at least, was set up in a time period where it got overshadowed by some other major titles. And same with some other games. And then they had the Fallout 76 debacle, but then they've committed and turned that around and fixed it. Companies can fix things and can change, but they have to be committed to doing so. You see a lot of success stories, like EA, for example, has been doing a lot better even after people just absolutely just tore them apart for like a decade for being really, really scuzzy about some stuff. They've seemingly turned things around quite a bit. I have hope for Square, but I really don't like how they're handling this Final Fantasy thing. Like, if it's full on exclusive, just be upfront and say that. Let us go about our business and go, okay, Final Fantasy is PlayStation. Got it. Cool. If I want to play it, I'll play it on my PS5. I won't hold out hope that maybe it'll come to Game Pass or be on my Series X. I'll just know that if I want to play Final Fantasy, I gotta play it on my PlayStation. But the fact that they leave the door like not quite closed but not quite open either is just it's maddening.
Yeah, I mean that's the major point, is that we don't know for sure if some games are coming over or all of them. Like, and they just aren't clear about it. You know, they're not going to put Final Fantasy games on Xbox anymore, but yet we're going to get Final Fantasy Origin, like the spin-off title, which I've played the demo. Oof, big oof. It's not good. It. Do you know what the problem with that game is? It plays half like Demon Souls, or I should say half like Dark Souls and half like Devil May Cry. It almost doesn't know what it wants to be. um, but the graphics are good and the performance mode actually works. Outside of that, you know, I don't know how that game's going to do on any platform, to be honest. The marketing's been all over the place. But like, I need to rant about Square even more. Square Enix is so incompetent with money, they didn't know how to handle the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 launch. You know, this generation, I should say that generation, a lot of publishers were scrambling because a lot of analysts predicted that tablet and mobile gaming was going to take over. And, you know, we had all those Android boxes around the same time, like the Ouya, where some developers and publishers thought those were going to take off more than the Xbox and PlayStation. And we saw what happened to that. But, like, a lot of the developers and publishers were scrambling. They didn't know what to do. Just Cause was originally going to be multiplayer. And then it was going to be an episodic title. And then a linear game. And then the game we got was bare bones. Like, Just Cause 3, there's nothing to do in that game. You just blow stuff up, and that's it. Thankfully, 4 was a lot better. But, like, even the remasters, like, so they did Western remasters for games. So Tomb Raider Definitive Edition launched in 2014. And the ports were handled extremely badly. But they also ported over Sleeping Dogs with Definitive Edition, which didn't sell well. Then this is the thing that made me wonder, like, do they actually know what they're doing? Because out of the 3 big Western titles, Deus Ex, Tomb Raider, and Sleeping Dogs, they decided to remaster Tomb Raider and Sleeping Dogs. So it wouldn't have made more sense to remaster Deus Ex, since that actually sold well and it was critically acclaimed. But it's Square Enix. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's sad because I see people wanting their games to come over. I know for a fact that the reason Kingdom Hearts, the collection, came over to Xbox is because of fans on Twitter and social media wanting it to come over. People were making fan art about these games coming over, and eventually we got them. Hell, the Switch is getting the cloud versions, like the superior versions of 4K on Xbox. Like, so it just goes to show that there is some sort of thing going on over there where they're willing to put games on the platform only if they know they're going to make money. A lot of it. And this is the thing. I think Square Enix holding their games hostage, their Japanese games hostage, for Game Pass money. We got Octopath Traveler as a random Game Pass drop. Nobody expected that to come to Xbox, yet it went over, and people enjoyed it. But that was completely out of nowhere, and it was Game Pass. So, I don't know, man. I just think Square need to put up or shut up, because they're going to put some games on Xbox, but not all of them. They're not going to tell us about which deals are in place. It's just weird, man. It's weird, because when their games come to other platforms years after release and they get no marketing, of course they're not going to bloody sell. Why would anyone see these games if they're not marketed? To this day, I speak to people online that had no idea Final Fantasy 15 was on Xbox. And that blows my mind. But it doesn't surprise me now, because they didn't market it. It's weird, and hopefully things will get better. But continuing with the Japanese thing, there was a Japanese game the other day. I cannot remember the name of it. Basically, their reasoning for not coming to Xbox was technical reasons. Now, that reason makes no sense, because the Xbox and PlayStation, they are basically the same console, same architecture. So when they say technical reasons, it's made up. It is. And what were you saying about this whole game before the show started?
Oh, I was saying that there's been an update on that one in particular. I can't remember the title of the game. Let me pull it up real quick. Here we go. The one that was about technical difficulties, they reached out to ID at Xbox, and they're looking into the situation to see if they can help and try to bring it to the platform still. So if it doesn't come to Xbox, it's not for a lack of trying from the Xbox team. They are trying to figure this out if they can.
Yeah, so hopefully, we will see more games come over, and it looks like we will from other publishers, mainly from Bandai and smaller companies. But hey, more Japanese games on Xbox is a good thing. Anyway, let's move on, because I'm just getting angry about the whole Square Enix thing. I try not to get angry about Square Enix every time, but even before the show, my blood was boiling. I need to talk about Square. But again, hopefully more things will get better in the future. But let's talk about Game Pass. So now, before we talk about what games recently came and the reaction to Game Pass, yesterday I was buying some gift cards in a supermarket, and this guy and I had a conversation, the guy behind the till, on about how I save money from it. And I began to realize it is true. If you talk about how good Game Pass is, you do sound like a shill, and you're trying to advertise it, and you just can't help it. It's a good service. And I start going on about how Microsoft reward points mean I get Game Pass for free. And a lot of people get Game Pass for free now. But yeah, if you positively talk about Xbox and Game Pass, you really sound like a salesman. And there's no other way around it. But I mean, hey, it's a good service. But anyway, big games came to Game Pass. Hitman the Trilogy is a ridiculous amount of content. You have access to all 3 games of content through the hub of 3. Meaning you have access to all the outfits, gadgets, weapons, and everything, and abilities, basically from 3 in the previous 2 games. So that's a lot of content, and it was just a random Game Pass drop. But also, a few weeks beforehand, Mass Effect Legendary Edition dropped. Now, that surprised me, because EA has been on this sort of year-long train from release to Game Pass, and it was about 7 months for Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And that surprised me. Mass Effect Legendary Edition was forecast to be one of the biggest sellers for EA. So Microsoft probably paid a lot of money up front to get that in the service. And the reaction was incredible. People in my feed are playing Mass Effect for the first time. And it's a big deal. A lot of people listening might be thinking, well, those are old games, and it's a remaster. This trilogy, this remaster, is setting people up for the next game. EA, they've moved on to letting developers use whatever engine they want to make the games they actually want. And we're going to be getting an Unreal Engine 5 Mass Effect, 4. I'm just going to call it Mass Effect 4. And I'm drooling at the thought of that. We've seen what, the that Matrix Awakens demo looked like, and we could possibly see those visuals in a Mass Effect title. Mind blown, you know. But people are loving like the Mass Effect trilogy. Like, have you played it yet?
Oh, I've played the original ones and plowed through them, but I haven't played the remaster yet.
Man,
I do plan to as well.
you have to. Like, I'm gonna sound like a Mass Effect chill, and I don't care. Those are the best remasters ever made. Like, I've played crap remasters, I've played ports, and I've played some relatively good ones. Another good remaster is Saints Row the Third Remastered. But Mass Effect Legendary Edition is just perfection. And if there was anything wrong with any of those games, I'd be the first person on Twitter to rant about it and complain. But there's nothing to pick fault with. You know, all the bugs from the original games that I experienced, gone. You know, people are experiencing these games for the first time without like minute-long elevator rides. You know, the Mako.
I remember those.
Yeah, like think about it. Elevator rides have gone from about a minute and 10 seconds to about three seconds. Like I know we're used to these SSDs now, and I know people on PC are really used to SSDs, but it just goes to show like the improvement. Because if you've got a game on your external hard drive, such as like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and you go back and forth, like the load times, how we put up with load times last generation boggles my mind. Like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I was getting load screens about 3 minutes long. You know, Metro Exodus, you could put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, watch Titanic come back, and it'd still be loading. And now it's just smooth as butter. Like, the gameplay experience is so much better, and people are playing Mass Effect for the first time and getting this experience, and it's incredible. The Mako no longer controls like a bar of soap on ice. It's great. It's like it's a great trilogy for people to play, and the fact that they're in Game Pass Ultimate, it makes me happy because I love the fact that more people are experiencing these games for the first time. I'm just a Mass Effect nerd at the end of the day. You know, I may cover Xbox, but the second Mass Effect pops up in the conversation, I'm going to talk about it all day. But yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time for Mass Effect fans because, you know, we have good things coming on the horizon. But yeah, speaking of services, Ubisoft Plus is coming to console. Now, that surprised a lot of people. And, like, that's a lot of games. Like, out of all the backwards compatibility games, there's a lot of Ubisoft titles, from Prince of Persia, Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon. The list goes on. There's a lot of titles by Ubisoft. So when Ubisoft Plus comes to Xbox, there's going to be about 100 games in the service, which is pretty impressive. And considering on their service, you also get DLC as well as new titles. So that means the new Splinter Cell remake and the next Assassin's Creed, you're going to be able to get them in that service. And I think it's about $10 a month or something like that. For what you get, I'd say it's going to be worth it. Like, have you seen much about this?
I'm honestly not the biggest Ubi guy, but I'm familiar with Ubi Plus, and it does seem like a good value. I remember a while back the buzz was that it might potentially join Game Pass, but it seems like they're keeping it separate for now, which will be something to keep an eye on as, you know, the industry moves forward.
Yeah, I know the whole service talk can, like, you know, bother some people, but, you know, people can still buy these games up front. No one's forcing them to, like, you know, subscribe to these services. But, like, if you're a fan of open world games, like, it kind of makes sense to get this because Ubisoft, they come out with maybe 2 open world games per year, and, you know, they have all their big games in there like Watch Dogs Legion, which has a ridiculous ton of content in now. It just makes sense. Like, I think Xbox gamers more specifically more willing to pay for a subscription service because I've noticed over the past generation, like, a lot of Xbox fans, they are fine with buying games digitally. So playing games via a service, you're getting the same experience, you know. And I think that's fine. You know, I think all these other forms of media changing, you know, books, movies, TV, music. I think it's okay for games to move into the 21st century. Whereas, you know, every other form of media, I don't see people outcrying online about being able to access movies day one via subscription service. Like, nobody complains. Look at The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett. Those are two of the biggest budget TV shows out there, and you get them day one via a subscription service, and that's all people talk about for the next week after these episodes drop. Hell, The Witcher, same thing. And I think it's okay for games to follow suit. Like, I think years from now, when our games consoles no longer exist and we playing just via a streaming app, like, our subscription models are going to be the main way to play games. And I think that's fine. You know, I think there's a lot of people still scared of the whole subscription service because they think they're getting their ownership taken away. But if you think about it, with the last generation, we had that taken away. DRM is attached to a lot of games. You know, games are either online only or they require online activation. And a lot of games get delisted all the time. You know, one of the reasons why I buy licensed titles digitally is so I have it in my folder ready to access whenever I want. So I don't know. I think people are going to be fine with this, and plus that's a lot of content. Like, I talk about Ubisoft games all the time because they make some good stuff, and it looks like they're going to have a lot of big games out this year. No, there's a new Assassin's Creed game out this year. Apparently, if everything goes according to plan, they have a new expansion coming to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. A new Avatar game is coming out in November, which is going to be massive. And, you know, Ubisoft, they used to be one of my favorite publishers. They make really good games, you know. I think it's okay for people to be excited about these things. Like, yes, there's going to be tons of good releases throughout this year by all the publishers. But I think having access to more games with a small subscription, I think that gives people more value. You know, everything in the world right now is kind of weird. A lot of people can't work as much as they could. People are making less money. But when you have access to a lot of games with a subscription service, I think it's fine. You know, we do have a lot of people and content creators that will talk about game ownership and like it's the end of the world. And like I still see value in boxed copies. You know, I like that experience of opening a game and taking the disc out. But it's not the same as it used to be. You know, part of that fun for me was seeing the little game guide or the manual. You know, mainly with Pokemon games back in the day. You know, as a kid on the way back home reading the coloured manual, it used to be cool. It used to be fun. But I don't know. I think as time moves on, I'm okay with digital games. Like, what's your take on the whole digital versus physical thing?
I've warmed up more to digital than I had in the past, but I still prefer physical. There's just something about tangibly. I have the case, I have the disc, I open it, I put it in the console, launch it, and then I have my collection on my shelf. And it's like, okay, here's my Gear Saga. Let me go to my library or do this or that. I do love digital, the ease and convenience of it, especially if, like, for example, I'm crashing at somebody's house and then they're like, oh, hey, let's play a game. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I can pull up my library digitally and play something on theirs that I own digitally because I didn't bring it with me physically. So stuff like that, like I enjoy the convenience of digital, and I enjoy that it's often cheaper because there's lots of sales. So I get them. But then again, I admit I'm a big user of the used game market where if I find a game on sale or cheaper used, I can get it. And that way I can. Some of these games you can't really find too much physically unless you go used. And I don't know, there's something about physical copies, but I do like digital as well. I think, I don't know how feasible it is, but I'd like to see a day where, like Blu-rays and 4Ks, like you buy one and it'll generally come with like a digital code as well, to where you can have a digital copy of your film to watch on one of your subscription services or whatever, or your consoles via cloud. I'd love to see that if gaming would do that as well. Like reward players, if you buy it physically, you also get a digital copy. Kind of like the Play Anywhere, like you buy it digitally on Xbox and they'll let you play it on PC and vice versa. I don't know how feasible that is, but I think that'd be really cool if they'd do something like that.
You know what's funny, you mentioning that? There's a service in the UK that kind of does that. if you so with Sky TV in the UK, if you buy a film digitally, you can tick a box and they will send you the Blu-ray out to your house. Like, isn't that kind of
That's
crazy?
awesome.
Like,
That's awesome. I had no idea.
yeah, like I've been buying films like for a while doing that, and it's kind of weird because like you'd think, oh well, are they going to worry that you're going to sell the Blu-ray or give it to somewhere else, which would like take away one sale from them? But they don't say it like that. They say it as like adding value to a digital copy. So that I would love that to happen in the future with games. Like it works for Sky in the UK, so I mean that would be really cool. And I think one of the biggest benefits to digital is the convenience. Not having to get up and put the disc in. That was one of the biggest selling factors for me with the original Xbox One and what they wanted to do. Like, you'd be able to keep the disc and you'd basically have the digital copy at the same time. Obviously, the way that was handled wasn't exactly the best and it kind of confusing to some people, but like, I'm more on the side of digital now than ever because, one, there isn't a video game store in my city, which is terrible, and it's just convenient. And what really blew my mind was so recently on Xbox there was a backwards compatibility sale, and there was a lot of cool games in there. And I probably shilled Binary Domain 12 times in the past week, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's brought to you by Binary Domain. Yeah.
Yeah, like that game is so good, and I'll probably talk about it later as well. But like I thought just for fun, I'd say how much the games I bought the past week in the sale would cost me in real life. So I spent about £32 on digital Xbox 360 games, and I bought one original Xbox game in the past week. It turns out if I wanted to buy them physically, it would be upwards of £200. And that was this moment where I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not done buying these games physically, but like as someone that's collecting Xbox 360 games, yeah, these backwards compatibility sales are the way to go. So if I'm buying a game that isn't available, like digitally or backwards compatible, like I'm just gonna buy it, because saving that much money is just, it's better, it's just good to save money, like, but yeah. I think digital versus physical thing, this talk's going to go on for ages. And I think it's okay for people to like one thing over the other, but like the amount of people that use this take for console war is very weird because PlayStation, they sell games digitally. They've had a subscription service longer, and people talk about game ownership like it's the end of the world. And it's like, okay, yes, a lot of Microsoft games tied to the disc and being able to download it. But guess what? Ubisoft games like that as well. I believe Far Cry and Watch Dogs Legion, you basically download the whole game. So I don't think it's just Xbox. I think a lot of companies are doing this. But at the end of the day, who does not have internet access in 2022? I know some people still have data caps, but I think it's just a bit overblown. I think it's just recently me seeing certain people in the game media talk about Microsoft forcing people onto a subscription service is just a bold... Yeah, that's a bold-faced lie. I'm going to say it. That's a blatant lie. I have never been forced to subscribe to Game Pass. I subscribe to Game Pass because it offers value. I never used to be subscribed to Game Pass. Up until like 2018 or 2019, like I never used to be subscribed because I used to have most of the games in there. And then they start adding more value and more value. And then they put EA Play games in there. And then they start putting even more games every month. And now we expect 2 drops per month of games. And people save thousands of pounds per year. Last year, I saved a few £1,000 just by being subscribed. And it's like, am I really going to say Microsoft's forcing me because their value is good? Or are people saying that they're being forced just because their favorite console doesn't have access to a service like that? There could be many reasons for people lying about this, but nobody's being forced to subscribe to Game Pass. It's just it's a bloody good service, and people subscribe because it's good. I do not subscribe to Disney Plus because it's crap and I have a gun to my head. I subscribe because it's good. I use Disney Plus every bloody day. That's a good service. Fun fact, I actually unsubscribed from Netflix for the first time in like 8 years. But Disney Plus, like, I subscribe to that, and I will do for years. But if something offers value, people will subscribe. Like that's just a fact, And I think the reactions I've seen this past week, it's a bit much. Gaming German journalism in the past, I'd say 7 years, 8 years, has kind of gone downhill. There's still some outlets that put out good content. One of my favorites is Game Informer. I think a lot of their articles are really good. But I don't know, man. I think it's just gone downhill. People will lie for clicks, and even if they don't think they're lying, they're putting out false messaging out there, which is influencing people. And it just causes more hysteria and more FUD online. It's like, if you have any sort of following and you cover gaming, you have an obligation to tell the truth. And people are lying all the time about this crap. And it's like, as someone that covers Xbox and Xbox gaming, like, you have to know the facts up front before you talk about this crap. Because, one, you're liable, and it influences people. I have 17,000 followers on Twitter. I can't lie to people because that stuff will expose me. Oh, I'm doing air quotes, doing expose. But it's like, I'm not going to lie to people just for clicks. And I think too many people rely on that type of stuff and being toxic just to push a false narrative. And that just irks me the wrong way. Like, I don't like people doing that crap. It's weird. That's enough of me ranting about this topic. I know the whole physical, digital thing and services thing can get on people's nerves, but it just needed to be talked about. And yeah. Anyway, we have to move on. Right, so we're now coming up to February, and there's 2 major releases. Well, 3. One being Elden Ring, one being Dying Light 2, and the other being Crossfire X. Now, Crossfire X, nobody knows what the hell's going on with that title because there's no marketing for it at all.
I legit forgot it was coming until yesterday. Someone tweeted about it. One of the devs I follow from, I believe, Bloober Team, he tweeted about it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that's coming this month? Coming up? I was like, I completely forgot that game existed. Like, nobody's talking about it. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and that's worrying. We've seen in the past when games, they're about to release and there's no marketing for it. That's a bad sign. Like, there are cases where the games came out and it's been fantastic. Remember Doom in 2016 had next to no coverage up until its release, and it turned out to be a masterpiece. Well, I mean, is that going to be the same with this? I love Remedy's games. I think their games are fantastic. They have excellent gameplay. The story's interesting. I think Sam Lake can come up with some of literally the best narratives, but it's worrying because we've barely seen any of it. We got a CGI, or shall I say, an in-game cutscene trailer last year. We got a release date at the Game Awards that featured some gameplay. There are some media outlets that have played a level, and they've said it's good, but it's worrying that we are about 15 days from it releasing, and we've seen nothing. There's no adverts, there's no launch trailers, there's no TV clips. They don't have a dedicated Twitter account pushing this, which is a bit weird, because Remedy normally go all out with marketing. They post fan art, trailers, clips, GIFs, all the time. But with Crossfire X, nothing. Zip, zilch. And that's worrying, because I've been talking about this game a lot, and I like the look of it. And it's a bad sign. They really need to talk about it, show us it. And no, it's not coming to Game Pass. I'm getting asked this every day and every time I talk about it. I think it's going to be a discount title since it's just a campaign and the multiplayer is free. That's just me thinking this. Because I don't think in 2022 you can charge upwards of $60 for a linear first-person title anymore. I don't think you can do that anymore. One of the reasons why I think Halo works as open world now, because it gives people replayability. But imagine if Halo Infinite, the campaign, was just a linear title again. Like, I don't think the reaction would have been well with that price. But that's that game. There's Elden Ring, which is going to be one of the biggest games of the year. I've played it. I've played about 10 plus hours of it. That game is fantastic. I know there's a lot of people that don't like From Software games just because of the difficulty spikes. It's good. Like, I'll put it like this. I think Assassin's Creed fans are going to really like this for some reason. just because the way the open world works. Like, are you interested in Elden Ring at all?
I am. I'll be honest, it's not going to be a day one for me, but it is a game I have my eye on and will pick up. I've enjoyed FromSoft's titles, like the original Dark Souls and Bloodborne in particular is my favorite. Then I have a Togi 1 and 2, but I'm not like part of the FromSoft cult. Like their fan base is diehard
Yeah.
loyal. Like I know cult has a negative connotation, but I mean it positively for this. Like it's just this they're fiercely loyal and supportive and like eat, breathe, sleep from soft titles. And I know they are ravenous for this game, and I'm happy for them. I'm not that way, but it is one I will check out because I love medieval lore and I enjoy the combat and the difficulty and boss rushing and stuff like that. And the fact that George R. R. Martin is involved with the narrative and lore takes it up a notch for me, for my interest. But I definitely know Miles and some other big members in the community are drooling at it and can't wait for the day it comes up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games that's been hyped for years. You know, we knew that the term Elden Ring before they showed a single frame of the teaser trailer. So this has been out there for a while, and it has a lot of hype. But I think this is going to be one of those instances where it lives up to it. Again, the tech test, 10 plus hours I put into it, it was amazing. Like, there are a lot of From Software fans out there that are a bit nuts. You know, they love everything they do. But I'm a From Software fan, and I'll tell you, I did not like Dark Souls 2 at all. I thought that was terrible. I did not like the way you collect the shards for healing. Not my thing. And I couldn't get into Sekiro because that game kicked my ass at every opportunity. Like, I could, like, there's a scene in an early Simpsons episode where Milhouse is playing Waterworld, the video game, and you can only walk 2 steps before dying. Like, that was me playing Sekiro. I was terrible at it. Absolutely trash bags. Hot bag of trash. That was me playing Sekiro. But this, it's good. It's open world means it just plays differently. It has these outposts that work a bit like Assassin's Creed outposts where you clear an entire outpost and rather than getting loose, you actually heal and then you fill all your flasks back up. So I think that's the thing that's going to make this game be more mainstream, is just that as an open world game, it just plays well, you know. But again, From Software fans are going to go nuts over this game. And yeah, Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 looks amazing. You know, that comes out in a week and a half or something. And that game's amazing. Like, it really does look amazing. Like, the reason I want to talk about Dying Light 2 is because a lot of people are talking about it right now. You know, the whole 500 hours thing. People freaked out about that a few weeks ago. But that is if you want to do multiple playthroughs and get the different endings and do all the collectibles. But the reason why a lot of people are excited for this game is that Dying Light came out and nobody was talking about it. You know, they cancelled the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. It didn't have a big marketing cycle. Nobody was talking about it. And it came out and people thought it was going to be a Dead Island ripoff. And it was the opposite. It was amazing. And the thing is, they gave that support, not just for a few months or weeks, and not just a year. Like, they supporting that game to this day. Like 7 years later, and it's getting a new expansion next week. Like, really think about it. Like, that's why people are so excited about this. Like, they've promised, like, you know, Dying Light 2, it's going to get 5 years of support, which is mind-blowing. Like, developers don't come out and talk about games like this, and they've listed what's coming out this year. They're coming out with multiple expansions and free content drops. And a lot of people were arguing today about the development because we're so used to games being broken and released piecemeal that people felt the need to, like, you know, ask the developers, like, oh, you're just splitting the game up before release and, you know, shilling it out to us over time. And I will say, the Dying Light Twitter account and whoever runs it, they are ruthless. They are roasting people and trying to ratio people by trying to, like, people are comparing it to Cyberpunk. You know, people like Cyberpunk, that's a story for another day, but, like, this game is complete and it works, apparently, you know? And that's the problem. We're so used to games being broken, is that we expect games to be broke. Like, how sad is that? Like, But yeah, they've promised 5 years of support, and they said that this is old school style of development. The game's finished, it went gold a few weeks ago, and like they are working on like the post launch content right now, and that's what's exciting. It's going to be one of the biggest games on Xbox this year, biggest games in general this year. Dying Light. Did you ever play the first Dying Light?
Yes, I love Dying Light. It was so fun, and all the Easter eggs to other franchises, like the Half-Life crowbar or the Super Mario warp pipe level that you can find hidden, and like the Sword in the Stone, and just all the DLCs that added different things, and it was really fun. The parkour just felt pristine in that game. It was just I there's been few games I've felt were as fun to travel in as that game was.
Yeah, like who would have thought a parkour first person zombie survival action simulator would actually work? And it just does. One of the first things people say when they first play that game. Oh, are we still connected?
Yes.
Okay. The data on my screen just went off. But yeah, like that game should not have worked. Like a first-person zombie parkour game. Like nobody expected that to work, and it was fun. Traversing that open world was amazing, and being chased by zombies at night when you can barely see was incredible.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and like there's a moment early on in Dying Light 2 where you put up against a toxic zombie where they can run and climb walls, and it's like you are crapping yourself because it's dark, you can't see what you're doing. But this sequel looks like it's going to be doing that and more. There's big choices you make throughout the game that completely change the map, and there's small choices. There's multiple factions you can side with. It's got tons of RPG mechanics now. The upgrade tree is even bigger now. The parkour is better. There's twice as many different parkour moves in the game, and you parkour faster. The grappling hook in this game works more like a Spider-Man swing rather than like a zip line, which I think is the right move. But it's a pretty big, ambitious game, and this is going to be one of the first big open world, action games on these new generation of consoles that they're going to utilize these, new consoles, because they've been talking about Xbox Series X or next generation Xbox and PlayStation longer than anyone else. Longer before Microsoft, longer before Sony. Like they've been talking about these next gen consoles since 2018. So that's the exciting part, because like the Xbox Series X version is going to have a performance mode, a ray tracing mode, and a resolution mode. And honestly, all three looked good. They also did the same for PlayStation, but like honestly, across the board it looks good. They even showed Xbox One X gameplay. That looks really good. So I think, across the board, like the developers have taken their time to like, make sure this game works and looks and performs well on all platforms, which is really cool. I think we need to see that more with more games now, which is kind of unfortunate, but I don't know, like it's going to be an exciting game to play, and it looks like it's going to be one of those titles that may actually live up to its reputation and excitement. Like this is really going to be one of the biggest games of the year. And also, this isn't a $70 game, or at least it isn't in the UK, and it just goes to show next-gen games don't have to be an extra $10. Just putting it out there. By the way, that extra game increase in price, that still irks me, man. I cannot stand that certain developers raised the price $10 when we were getting free upgrades on Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, and a lot of the upgrades we see now aren't doing anything different other than load screens and bloody giving the PlayStation controller rumble. Like, stop with that nonsense. Like, if any developers or publishers are listening, stop charging $10 extra. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't want to spend an extra $10 on games that you aren't justifying the price for. Stop it.
If recent news is any indication, that might change for some companies' titles. I don't know, but
yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. Now, next up, GoldenEye. So, GoldenEye kind of leaked a few weeks ago, and the achievement list. Now, a lot of people don't know what this is. The actual original GoldenEye got a remake in about 2007, 2008 for the Xbox 360, and it was never released. The whole license situation between Activision, MGM, and Nintendo all over the place. Like, apparently Nintendo would need a release of it. Like, so the game never released. And then randomly at the beginning of January, the achievement list leaks. Now, the thing that surprised a lot of people is that it wasn't just the Xbox 360 achievements. This was Xbox One achievement art, which it's like, why would that have existed? This was a game made in 2007, 2008, you know? This was going to run at like 1080p, 60 frames per second on Xbox 360. So it turns out two of the people that work at Rare, their achievements went live and people started to notice them. And, you know, news have been coming out since. There's been leaks and stuff, and it looks like we are going to get the GoldenEye remake, the proper remake, on Xbox this year. And I think it's also going to go to the Switch. It's probably going to be the original version via the Nintendo Online service. Could be wrong. But, I mean, I'm excited, man. Did you ever play GoldenEye back in the day?
Oh, of course. GoldenEye was my entrance into FPS. I just so many memories of, with the golden gun and multiplayer and then all the gadgets trying to get through the missions, and that's one of the all-time greatest FPS and influential titles ever, and one of the best movie adapted games ever. And it's iconic, basically it spawned Perfect Dark, and like the rest is history. Like I'm super happy that it's coming back, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's one of Rare's biggest games. Like, for people that are a bit younger and that don't know about this, like, the Nintendo 64 was, going to be this revolutionary console that had 3D gaming, and GoldenEye, was a big summer blockbuster that year, and the game was not ready. The game came out, I think it was like a year and a half or 2 year after the film, and people were expecting this game to do badly. It had every right to do badly. It was a movie licensed title in the 90s for the Nintendo 64, made by a small British team years after the film's release. It had everything going against it, and the game came out, and it was incredible. To the point where I think it launched in 1997, and then the year later, it sold more copies than it did at launch. And then the following Christmas, it sold more copies than the previous 2 years combined. To this day, it's the second best-selling Nintendo 64 game behind behind Mario 64. Like, it is one of the best games ever made. It rated like 97 on Metacritic or something, and it's great. And it had a multiplayer mode that was revolutionary at the time. This is the game that made, I want to say, multiplayer at home with split screen popular. People would do all these tricks with like cardboard, like pieces, like to like split the screen so you couldn't see who was where on screen. I don't know. It's exciting because this is coming back, and we're going to be able to play GoldenEye online. Now, it's not official yet, but after the achievement leak and after various other outlets reporting it, it's happening. It's happening. The GoldenEye news has been kind of low key for a few years now. And the funny thing is that when this whole thing leaks, the achievement list and, the two developers no longer tweeting about stuff online, the official Bond Twitter account came out saying, oh yeah, there's going to be different forms of media this year for James Bond to celebrate the anniversary. It's like, isn't that a bit of a coincidence? Yeah, it's like we got No Time to Die in, I think it was November last year or something. And then they're talking about, new forms of media for Bond this year. And it's like, it looks like it's going to be GoldenEye. And the thing that really excites me is not just playing this GoldenEye remaster. That's actually, I should say remake. It's a piece of gaming history that people haven't played. It's going to be introducing a completely different audience to multiplayer from the 90s that just played so well. The reason Perfect Dark exists is because of GoldenEye. And another reason why this excites me is that this might be opening up the floodgates to ports of other Bond games. And throughout that generation, and the GameCube and Xbox and PlayStation 2 generation, and even the Xbox 360 generation, we had multiple Bond games. Made by Activision. I think Binox made one. Basically all over the place. We had first-person shooters, third-person shooters. We had games with puzzles, action all over the place, and we could be living in a time where we could be seeing a lot of Bond games come back, be it in the form of remasters and remakes. Like, did you ever play any of them on GameCube?
Yeah, I Nightfall
Yeah.
and that one was so good. And then there was one with it was like not GoldenEye, but it got the cover of it had a guy with a golden eye in it. I can't remember which one, what the title was. And then there was they actually got Sean McConnery back for From Russia with Love, and there were so many good Bond games.
Yeah, and those games were good because they had first-person shooter elements. They were filled with puzzles. The gadgets you would use in the games were good. You'd have a watch with a laser that would cut through certain walls and stuff. Really cool times, and it's just cool that we might be seeing a lot of those games come back because licensed games, they disappear all the time. There's a lot of people that will never get to play certain Transformers games or certain Bond games. The list goes on. Captain America Winter Soldier, as I say, Super Soldier on the Xbox 360, that game's gone to time now. People can't play that. And then there's a lot of Bond games that I think people would be like to play in. And we also have the IO interactive game coming this year. So that's another new Bond game. Although I do think we will see the trailer for that game and it will come out next year. But it's going to be a good time to be a Bond fan because we could potentially be seeing a lot of games come back. To the point where I've been watching people like cover like Bond games, like walkthroughs and stuff, and like 007 Nightfire still looks pretty good. Like from the GameCube, like that was such a good game. I could talk about Bond games all day, but we've got to move on. Okay, next up, EA. EA came out today, and they're going to be coming out with 3 new Star Wars games. Now, one of those being a first-person shooter. This has been kind of known for a while. What's funny is, internally, it's not referred to as Battlefront 3. Which makes me think, like, what if it's something else? Like, the first-person shooter could be anything. It could be, let's say, a new... what was that game on the original Xbox? The co-op game.
Republic Commando.
Republic Commando. Like, especially with Bad Batch being a thing now, like we could probably see a new co-op game. But the fact that they're not referring to it as Battlefront, that gives me hope. Battlefront's fine and all, but I think people maybe want something new. After the reception of Battlefield, people maybe need something slightly different. But hey, I'm probably going to buy it day one. I love Star Wars, and I'm all up for a new Star Wars first-person shooter.
Amen.
The next game is a new game by Firaxis developers, and this is a strategy game. Now, we don't really get strategy Star Wars games that often. In fact, I think the last one that came out was probably 2001, somewhere around then. But a new Star Wars strategy game, I think people would be up for that. And the last game is a Respawn title. Now, it's Jedi Fallen Order 2. Like, I've been trying to tell people online for the past few months without directly saying it. Like, we're going to see Jedi Fallen Order 2 this year. It was probably originally going to release this year, but due to the pandemic, I think we're going to get the trailer in May, and it's probably going to release sometime in 2023. But did you play Jedi Fallen Order?
Oh, of course. I plowed through that game, collected everything, love that game so much. Highest praise I can give is it's right up there with Knights of the Old Republic as one of my favorite Star Wars games, period. It was my game of the year. It was phenomenal. They took the combat from Sekiro and changed it and kind of made it into a Star Wars style. And the exploration, a little bit of Metroidvania where you go and you can collect and find everything in the game, and it can alter how things go. And the boss fights and every encounter felt real, and story was great, really interesting new characters. Some older characters that were shown in a different light as well, and it really expanded upon the lore of Star Wars and is helping bridge that gap. between 3 and 4, and I am so hyped for part 2.
Yeah, the thing about Jedi Fallen Order, it kind of scratched the itch people wanted. It was a game that would actually, tease the original trilogy elements. It had Easter eggs all over the place of the original trilogy. They were like clone outfits all over the place. It was very well done. Like, as a fan of Star Wars, of the original series and of the prequels, like, this game hit all the right notes. And the fact that it had a flashback to a certain point, I still don't want to spoil the game for people. But there's a flashback that fans of Star Wars will like. But yeah, Jedi Fallen Order 2. Like, I've known about this game for a long time. A lot of people have, but we're going to see more ambitious worlds. You see, when this game was in development, EA was very unsure about how a single-player Star Wars game would sell. And internally, it reviewed pretty well. But again, EA did not think it was going to sell well. Because again, they thought, who's going to play a single-player Star Wars game for a long time? Who's going to buy these games? Well, it turned out a lot of people. It sold over 10 million copies. It was the second biggest seller in the US of the year from it released. Which, like, if you think about it, that's really impressive. On that list, there was Call of Duty at number 1 and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order at 2. Like, that's amazing for a single player game. And there was no DLC, and there was no microtransactions. It's just a single player experience. And it sold boatloads, which is fantastic because I'm going to get more. But yeah, it's a great game. People need to play it. Again, it's an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and EA Play. But yeah, we're getting a sequel. And the thing is, this ran on Unreal Engine. And if people have been following me for a while, I will tear Frostbite a new one at every opportunity because of what had happened with Mass Effect. But yeah, Unreal Engine. It's probably going to be Unreal Engine 4 again. Those games still look amazing. But we're going to be getting a new game next year probably, and that's exciting. Again, like you were saying, it's up there with Knights of the Old Republic, and it had no right to be. Like, nobody expected it to be that good. Its combat, great. Soundtrack, excellent as you expect from a Star Wars game. The planets and how you explore them, so well done. They made it open world, linear Metroidvania with Star Wars in Souls-ish combat. I could play that game all day. The parrying of, laser bolts just work. It really does. I see Winter Soldier say, I'd like to see a new Jedi Academy or Mandalorian. I can tell you there's a game in development that's gonna how shall I say, it's gonna make a lot of Mandalorian fans happy. That's all I'm saying. But if you're a Mandalorian fan, there's a Star Wars game coming out in the next 2 years. It'll settle those needs. But Jedi Fallen Order 2. Sorry?
I said this is the way.
Yeah. I love Mandalorian, and people will be down for the game that's going to be a lot like Mandalorian. Again, I'm just saying. But Jedi Fallen Order 2. I cannot wait for this. Again, it's good to see. And, people crap on EA all the time. They really do. But over the past year and a half-ish, they've shown some really good signs that they are actually letting developers make what they want. This doesn't go across the whole board. Mass Effect is moving to Unreal Engine. Thank God. And, I love the fact that they actually have their A team working on Mass Effect using Unreal Engine. Dragon Age is a single-player only game now. They've removed the live service element and the multiplayer element. It's single-player only. Star Wars and other games can use whatever engine they want. And it's just Battlefield that seems to be going through a rough patch at the minute. This wasn't on the topics list, but have you played Battlefield yet?
No, I have not. And I know is it's a hot mess right now, from what I've been hearing and seeing online.
Yeah, when you see things like BioWare and Respawn, they making the games they really want, and other studios at EA basically being given creative freedom to make whatever they want. They're making multiple different open world action games at the minute. Some will be out in the next year and a half, which we will see this year. But Battlefield's been in this weird position. They've been extremely reactive to Fortnite and Call of Duty. You know, Battlefield 5 got a battle royale last minute in the form of Firestorm or whatever the hell it was called. Nobody played it. Nobody liked it. And the list continues. You know, Battlefield was going through multiple forms of development. Originally, it was a Battlefield 2042 was originally a battle royale. Then it was going to be free to play. Then they didn't want to do free to play because that wouldn't make the money they wanted up front. It was originally going to have a campaign. Then they removed the campaign. It ran on an older version of Frostbite, and then they had to move to a next generation version of Frostbite that isn't even finished yet. So it's all over the place. And the game that came out is bland. And the trailers we were shown were lies. You know, these trailers are heavily scripted. And Battlefield 2042's trailers are possibly the most scripted multiplayer trailers I've ever seen. And the thing is, these developers, they were put in a sticky situation. They had to make a Battlefield game from home with limited hardware. And during a cross-generation period where a lot of these developers, they didn't even have dev kits for Xbox Series consoles and PlayStation 5s, and they didn't even have dev kits for the other consoles as well. So it was all over the place. Battlefield had a horrifically bad development phase. So as we were watching all these really cool trailers, they were scrambling together this game and trying to get something out that worked. And the game they came out with is bland. The maps are boring. Hell, they were thinking about shutting down the Reddit page for Battlefield 2042 because of toxicity. I'm doing air quotes, but it's fans buying Battlefield up front for $70 and not having a campaign, having less content. It now has hero shooter elements, so you don't have classes anymore. You have operators like Call of Duty, and it's like it's not a Battlefield game. And it occurred to me when I saw one particular tweet that Battlefield is screwed for like forever going forward. And I hate the fact that I'm going to have to say this as a Battlefield fan. This game cost $70 up front. When I said I didn't like the fact that it wasn't getting a campaign, fans were saying, but that means they can concentrate on the multiplayer. It's going to be a great multiplayer experience now. And I accepted it. I was like, okay, you know what? Fine. No campaign. The multiplayer, all the attention's going there. Well, we saw what happened. But this game cost $70. It got less content. It got less maps. The maps are bare bones. Do you know there's memes going around right now where people are posting that old Windows wallpaper of the hill? Because that's what the maps are like. They just open. Like,
oh my God.
Like people are like memeing the hell out of this game, just posting pictures of empty fields and saying, "Look, new Battlefield map." Because that's what the maps are like. You're just running forever. People are using hovercrafts to get to the top of buildings, and it's like it makes no sense. But this game costs $70 up front for a game that has next to no content. And I saw this one particular comment by a developer, and this is when I realized the franchise is screwed. And bear in mind, nobody should harass these developers. Don't tweet at them if you don't like something. Do it through official channels and forums or whatever. This person was annoyed that they spent $70 on this game. And he said, I would like to see some skins for people that have bought this game, you know, maybe once per month, maybe one gun skin per month. And this developer replied saying, wait, do you want these for free? Question mark. And that's when it occurred to me Battlefield's screwed as a franchise. Like, they want to have the complete experience of a free-to-play game with a $70 experience where people are more frugal with money now, more than ever when it comes to buying games, because we're so used to games coming out broken that Battlefield is done as a franchise. EA doesn't know what to do. They keep trying to force these other superhero, just say live service elements. Like, I'm triggered right now, right? I probably sound it. Like, my blood is boiling because Battlefield is ruined as a franchise. Like, they want to monetize every living aspect of it. Do you know what progression was for Call of Duty and Battlefield during the Xbox 360 generation? It was you as a player getting better and getting a logo. Like progression now, it's like, oh, it has to be what your character looks like. It has to be skins. It's like, these games, like Call of Duty has a big fan base, huge fan base. That game will always be, that will always do well. and we'll talk about Call of Duty in a bit. But Battlefield, it's done as a franchise. Like, I cannot see it recovering. Battlefield 3 came out during a time when Call of Duty was on a bit of a downslope, and people loved it. Battlefield 4 comes out in 2013. Broken to hell, the campaign wouldn't save, the multiplayer was broken, and it was only fixed after a year. Battlefield Hardline came out, nobody wanted a police-based Battlefield game. And then they came out with Battlefield 1, Sniper Alley, everything just filled with snipers. And then, just when people were thinking, oh, we're going to get a modern Battlefield game, they came out with Battlefield 5, a World War II game. Nobody asked for that. And then they came out with this, marketed to hell with some really cool trailers, but filled with lies. Lied to the gamers across the world wanting a brand new modern Battlefield game for almost a decade, and we get a steaming pile of content that's just empty hills and nothing to do. It's a shame. It's a shame because over this past generation, I've seen multiple franchises die. You know, Mass Effect was on the brink. Battlefield, well, that's basically done. You know, thankfully, Dead Space is coming back. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's going to be a long time before Battlefield sees any type of glory in the future. We've got to move on. I'm triggered, man. I'm so infuriated. The thing is, I didn't buy it, and I'm still angry. Right? I've been playing the whole 10-hour trial thing, and there's nothing there to enjoy. So I feel for all the people that spent $70 or more. There's like $120 version of this game that has
yikes.
Yeah. So he's the kicker. People that bought the $120 version that has the year season pass or whatever it is, EA has to legally supply them with this year of content to make sure they obviously don't get like sued or whatever. But it's like there's next to no one playing. And it's weird, man. Like it's weird. Anyway, we've got to move on. I'm triggered. So the biggest piece of news, which is somewhat optimistic and better than the Battlefield thing, obviously, Microsoft decided to buy Activision, and that somehow didn't leak. In a world where every game leaks every week, every month, before every E3 and whatever, everything leaks. But these huge, monumental game acquisitions, such as Bethesda, and even when Sony buys these studios, like, these just don't leak. So, like you were saying before the show went live, like, obviously there's some legality in the whole non-disclosure agreement to stop these from, like, leaking and stuff. And it's like, I don't know, I'm going to let you take the chair when it comes to the whole Activision Blizzard thing, because I've been talking for 5 minutes and I need a drink. What's your thought on the whole Activision Blizzard thing?
Well, my first thought was I thought it was fake, just like the Bethesda thing at first, because I kind of had slept in that morning, and so then I hop on Twitter and I see people talking about this or this. I'm like, wait a minute, what? I'm like, are people just fanboying again? And then I look and I go to Phil and Major Nelson, and I'm like, lo and behold, they bloody bought Activision Blizzard. Like all those talks that we've had and others have had about, okay, let's be realistic about what they can acquire. Like those have been nuked now. It's like they bloody went out and spent $68.5 billion to acquire Activision Blizzard, and just the biggest deal in gaming history from a money standpoint, from an impact standpoint. Bethesda was huge, and this is like death con, just like unprecedented, like hard to put into words just how big of a deal this is. And then immediately people on certain sides of the aisle become legal experts all of a sudden, start decrying, saying it's this or that or whatever. You got people tagging the president of the United States of America about things. You've got people losing their mind over this deal. Like it's been a week. People are still going nuts about it, and it's it's hysterical. I'm thrilled personally, because it's gonna not only, they have Call of Duty, they have Crash Bandicoot, they have Spyro, they have Tony Hawk, They have Warcraft, they have Starcraft, they have Hexen, they have Gun, True Crime, uh, Prototype, this new IP that Blizzard just announced today that's a survival game. They have all these other games in their vault. You have all these talented studios. They jump up to 30 plus now. You can now creatively free studios from the COD mines to where they're not, forced to pump up COD and get it out the door every year, even if it's a hot, buggy mess at launch. And their culture is being changed because now everybody's going to report directly to Phil himself, who is now the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, one of 3 CEOs at Microsoft. That is a huge deal. They've created an entire branch in Microsoft now that they are all in. If you somehow thought they weren't all in after Bethesda, well, I got news for you. You don't drop 70 billion and create a whole new division of $1 trillion company, not be all in. They're guns blazing, like all these IPs. Number one is this is the chance for these devs to be free of this culture stuff they've been dealing with, and I'll just leave it at that. And they have creativity restored. They're going to be allowed to do what they want. There's going to be new people and new management in charge. It's a reset. They can hire people now and they can go, look, see, we're under new management going forward, and this and this and that. And just, I'm euphoric about it. How about you, man?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. As someone that's been following the whole Activision thing closely, because like that's a messy situation. Like, they need a change in culture. They have developers over there that work hard on these games that didn't ask to be put in the position that they're all put in. There's people that their lives are being changed for the worst, and it's clear that Blizzard and Activision were probably some of the worst places to work in the industry just due to the harassment and everything going on over there. So a complete change in leadership and culture, it's needed. And the thing is, Activision were wanting to be bought. I think when everything, happens, they can clear house. They can, go the legal way and make sure that the people that wronged others, are sued or put away. But yeah, I think this is going to benefit everyone. It's going to benefit games. It's going to benefit developers. It's going to benefit everyone that's suffered over the past few years. I think it's a good move, And I think people will think, oh, it's just a fanboy nonsense. Like one of my biggest takeaways, other than developers having a better place to work, it's that these games may not be rushed anymore. Like you were saying with Call of Duty. Call of Duty is on a yearly annual release, right? So we get a new game every single year, and they're on a 3-year rotation. So there's Infinity Ward, there's Sledgehammer Games, and then there's Treyarch, and they all rotate. But with the last Call of Duty game, there was development issues, and then one of the other teams had to replace them, and then get another game out earlier. So like Vanguard was probably going to come out this year, and a different game was originally going to come out last year. So that game was definitely rushed. And there's a lot of people that like Vanguard. I think the campaign looks really interesting. So I'm looking forward to going through that. But it's clear that their games are rushed. And now the topic has came up about, will they still release games annually? And I've seen a myriad of different reactions to this. You have the Call of Duty pros and content creators freaking out because every single year when a new game comes out, they get this huge influx of, views and attention. And obviously, there's a new Call of Duty releasing. But also, I think there's a lot of people realizing that that's not the best way to release a game. Like, it really isn't. These games, like, look at Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed used to come out every single year, and they changed it, like, to, like, in every, like, other year release. And it's like, maybe Call of Duty needs that. Maybe games could have longer life cycles. My initial thought for Call of Duty, and people at Activision and EA, or I should say Microsoft, can take what I'm about to say and do something with it. I'll accept the check. Come out with a Call of Duty game every other year, and give it 2 years of support. And then when a game has released its 1 year, give it a huge expansion, be it single player or like a different time setting, but with those weapons. Like they could do all sorts with it, you know. I think given these games, like Call of Duty multiplayer for a game essentially dies after a year. Like there's no more support. They get some patches and that's it. But if they could do 2 years of support, give them bigger expansions, give developers more time to make more maps, would satisfy a lot of the Call of Duty crowd because they got to get more content more often for a longer amount of time. So I think that would be cool. I would prefer to have a better Call of Duty game every other year than just pumping one out every year. Like if they moved the Call of Duty development cycle to a 2 year period, each developer would have an extra year because they, not coming out with an extra game. I think it would just benefit everyone. And then you have to look at the other games. Like Overwatch 2, the reception of that announcement was horrific. Like Overwatch didn't need a sequel. They just need to come out with more content. And then they came out and said, well, you can play all the sequels content if you own the first game, if you buy something. It's like, it's weird. But it's like, I think it's just going to benefit games. It really is. And you have all their teams over there, such as Raven Software, and you have Toys for Bob. All these developers that would make other games were moved to Call of Duty as support teams. They have some of the best developers over there making Call of Duty content because they had to get extra hands on board to get a Call of Duty game out in time. Like, a lot of people's first thought was like, what if we get a Singularity 2 by Raven Software? What if we get a Banjo-Kazooie game by Toys for Bob? The list goes on. Like, the developers of the Transformers games, they make Call of Duty content now. It's like, what if we got more Transformers games or more third-person action games by them? Like, all those developers have so much talent. They clearly have talent for the games they've made, and they make Call of Duty maps every year, and that's sad, and a lot of people's big takeaway, like the positive one, was that, like, move Call of Duty to a 2 year, like, lifespan or whatever, and they can still come out with remasters, put the multiplayer in those remasters, because remember, Modern Warfare 2 remastered, it had no multiplayer, and people lost their minds because some of the best multiplayer of all time, not included. Like, what were they thinking? And I know what they were thinking. They were just wanting to get the campaign out the door, make a little bit of cash by nerds like me that want the campaign. But, like think about it. If they released a Call of Duty 1 year, a brand new game, and then they released a remaster the next year with multiplayer, I don't think people would have a problem with it. Because, again, original Black Ops multiplayer is some of the best multiplayer I've ever played. Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, perfection. Like, people would buy those games. And it's all up in the air at the minute. But again, it's going to be business as usual for the next year. We will be seeing a lot of these titles in Game Pass. And as HK Gaming said, StarCraft. And like, look, I would love StarCraft to be a viable franchise for other genres. Because think about it, we were going to get a third-person StarCraft game. And it got cancelled. Yeah. And then there was another one about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. That one got cancelled as well. So, like, imagine the Coalition on a StarCraft game. Boom. That's millions of sales right there, right? Like, StarCraft could be a way bigger franchise than it is right now. They could put StarCraft on consoles. That would work. World of Warcraft has been rumored to come to Xbox and PlayStation for a long time now. Well, they could potentially have two of the biggest MMOs in Game Pass. Like, the value proposition alone for Game Pass, and I'll stop shilling for Game Pass right now, but I'm saying, like, the value for all those Call of Duty games, all their, offshoot games, like, we could probably see the Transformers games come back. Who knows, we could maybe see Singularity backwards compatibility, or even a remaster. Like, the list goes on, and, a lot of people's big takeaway was Toys for Bob on Banjo-Kazooie. Like, that just seems like such an obvious no-brainer. And I think it, other than developers having better working conditions, I think it's just excitement over more games. Again, Toys for Bob, Banjo-Kazooie, Coalition, StarCraft. The list goes on.
I'm euphoric about the whole thing, man. I think Toys for Bob gives them that studio that they've long needed since Rare has adjusted and kind of has a different goals in mind for the types of titles they're making going forward. Toys for Bob gives them that studio that can pump out family friendly titles like Banjo Kazooie, obviously, Spyro, Crash, which apparently has melted the internet the past 24 hours, which is a whole different story. But yeah, and then maybe they could unwrap Vicarious Visions from being like absorbed into another studio. Maybe they have a great history. They could resurrect Neversoft. They have so many different good studios in this bundle that they're getting and IPs. Like even Guitar Hero, we forgot to even mention that earlier. That's a huge deal. Skylanders. Um, they have so many IP that they are Bill says that they're going to look at bringing back. And if these teams aren't 100% focused on some of them, they could use like a Night Dive studio to like port Hexen or do something like that to test gauge the waters. And then like you said, Coalition could do StarCraft or and you can look at the Bethesda studios as well. You have three huge conglomerates of studios now that can all work with each other and collaborate or shuffle each other's IP. Like, for example, the initiative was created and they're working on Perfect Dark, which was originally made by Rare. You could have imagine a Warcraft action game, kind of gritty. You could have that by Arcane. I mean, the possibilities are just crazy, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, and I know like P Firebird in chat said like we won't see these games for years. That is true. Good games take time, and it's the excitement of the possibilities. Like look at how far Xbox has grown in the past 5 years when it comes to studios, right? And a lot of their games, such as Halo, Flight Sim, Psychonauts 2, all reviewed and praised across the board. So people are excited about the future because, again, look at Banjo-Kazooie as a franchise. Banjo-Kazooie has not been relevant for the mainstream for about, 15 years? Something like that, when Nuts and Bolts came out, and even that was received in a weird way. Like, it's the excitement of these IP being able to grow. Look at Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer, one of the first things he said was like, look at all these franchises we can come back. Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero used to be one of the biggest franchises on the planet, and the only reason it tanks is because they were coming out every year with a new model where you had to buy the guitar and a new list of songs, and then eventually they would get delisted. Like, rather than a $60 product per year, you were paying $80 for the guitar, the game, and that was a weird way to do it. And then when they tried to bring Guitar Hero back in 2015, they came out with a guitar nobody likes. So people aren't going to play a game for hours at a time with a controller that plays like crap. That 6-button controller with the two rows of 3, nobody liked that. Literally, not a single person on earth liked that. That's factual. But like the fact that could come back. Tony Hawk had a big remake. I think it was like a year and a half ago or something. Like, people loved that remake. People want Tony Hawk to come back, or at least a new premium snowboarding experience. People are excited over the possibilities, and that's exciting. But there's also the dark side of this whole situation where people lost their minds. Chaos ensued. Utter madness. People lost their minds to the point where they were tweeting Joe Biden that they need to stop Microsoft from purchasing Activision. It's like that's how upset some people are. It's like people going back and forth about, is it right to buy a developer or publisher? And people were saying all sorts. It's okay for Sony to buy certain developers because they have an organic relationship. Yet it's not okay for Microsoft to pick up a publisher because it's a publisher that puts games on other platforms. It's like, nobody made a fundamental rule about what's okay. Sony took away Spider-Man from Xbox. They took away Knights of the Old Republic. Nobody batted a bloody eye when Knights of the Old Republic came out as a timed exclusive on their PlayStation event in December. Not a single person talked about it, and not a single person in the media, although I did see Destin Legary mentioned it. Like, nobody talked about it and like gave Sony any negative flack. They never do. They never do. It's not a biased media type thing. It's people literally unwilling to tell the truth. Like, Sony gets away with murder at this point just because it's Sony. And that's so annoying. Imagine if Sony had bought Activision. Would a single person be asking these same questions? Would these people still be texting Joe Biden or whoever to get this deal to stop? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. And people that say that they would, they lie, and they bloody know it. Look at Aaron Greenberg, a Microsoft executive whose job is to market Xbox, changed his profile picture to him and Crash Bandicoot in the same picture. It's not the end of the world, is it? Nobody got hurt. It didn't create the apocalypse. No. People lost their minds just because Crash Bandicoot was in a profile picture with Aaron Greenberg. Like, that's what we live in now. People are taking everything too personally. Crash Bandicoot has been an Activision character more than he was with PlayStation. Sorry to put that out there, but it's true. And here's the thing. Crash Bandicoot back in the day, cool game. But people don't talk about Crash Bandicoot all the time because Crash Bandicoot hasn't been relevant really outside of the remake and 4. But it's the fact that these characters can come back. We could have a new Spyro the Dragon game. Like, apparently there was a Spyro game in development and that got cancelled. That could come back now. So it's like people want to see these franchises return, and we live in a world where it could happen now because Phil Spencer's clearly said, there's interest in the IP. They didn't just buy Activision just because of Call of Duty and just because of World of Warcraft. No, it's because they have some of the most well-known IP on the planet, and they could do stuff with it. But they aren't really doing anything with Crash Bandicoot at the minute. They could come out with a brand new one. And again, put these teams on different games. It's exciting because we live in a world where these things are possible now. And it wasn't possible last week or the week before. Like, think about it. Nobody was talking about Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon before that announcement because we knew fair well that all those studios were Call of Duty support teams. Like, that's the reality of the situation. But now it's possible. And the reaction from it, man, what was your takeaway from the reaction?
I thought the hysteria was hilarious, but I agree with all the really supreme optimism. I mean, it's nuts to me, and like, this is a whole topic you could spend an entire episode of the show on, about the difference in coverage on one side of the aisle versus the other, and whether the way things are handled are the right way or the wrong way, if there is bias, if there's not bias, if it's just this or if it's that. But there was definitely some fear mongering going on from some pretty large presences on Twitter and social media, spreading some stuff that firing folks up and stirring the hive. Like, basically, they're kicking the hornet's nest and keeping this thing going. Like, and I think that's part of the reason Phil came out and did that interview really quickly with Washington Post, and he's like, yeah, we're so excited for this. We're going to be doing this. We're looking at all these IP. I'm so excited. Like, dude, Hexen. Like, nobody's talked about Hexen in, like, almost 20 years. It's like, dude, we can talk about Hexen. We can talk about Guitar Hero. Dude, we got King's Quest now. That's an iconic game from the old LucasArts Sierra rivalry back in the day. I mean, talking about all those and how they're going to change the culture. And then, saying that he has talked specifically with Sony leadership, several calls, and he's confirmed once again. I mean, I think everybody should take Phil at his word at this point. He's proven it time and time again. Like, the guy is a good dude. Like, if he says he's going to do something, he does it. And he said, like, look, I've talked to them. I've declared I'm keeping our commitments. Whatever Activision Blizzard was up to, that was written in documents, whatever, that they have an arrangement for something, we will honor that, just like they did for the Bethesda, or when they acquired Obsidian, and they were still working on the Outer Worlds 1 with the private division. They went ahead and released all it on the other platforms. Psychonauts 2, Wasteland 2, Wasteland 3, excuse me. They were released on the other platforms as agreed upon. They didn't try to buy their way out of a contract or force a court case. They said, you know what? They've written it, we will honor it. And so that's what he's saying. Like, we're gonna honor this. Like, let's take it down a notch. Let's calm down. And it's their desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. And then PlayStation right before that had a statement that, yeah, we expect Xbox is gonna keep their arrangements and keep things the way they are. And so I think that was partly to help shareholders and stockholders who were freaking at Sony. Also, to kind of calm down the hysteria about, oh, this is bad, they're an empire, they're taking over this and this. He's like, look, we're going to do this like we did Bethesda, and we're going to honor what we've committed to. And we're going to, it's not our desire to take Call of Duty away. Whether that means it's up to interpretation. I'm sure you have a take on it about whether that means we're just going to have Warzone going forward or all Call of Duties going forward or if it's just till the licensing runs out for the marketing deals or what. But he says, like, look, Call of Duty, the biggest game in the world, sales wise and everything else, will remain as is. Now, he's like, we have desire to keep doing that. That was to calm down all these folks who were tearing their hair out about the idea of big bad Microsoft is stealing COD from these children and they're hiding it away and they're milking money and they're depriving this and they're anti-consumer and they're monopoly and just all that just ludicrous nonsense that was going on in the past week.
Yeah, I fully expect like Microsoft they have to like obey the deals they have in place, and plus that makes sense. Like, why go about and just canceling deals like that makes no sense. Me personally, I think Warzone that's gonna obviously stay on the platform because it's already there. I think any future battle royale, Call of Duty battle royale, will also be on PlayStation. I think the Call of Duties that are currently agreed upon will also release on PlayStation. So I think the next two. But I think after that, all bets are off. Like Call of Duty, Diablo, Overwatch 2. Like I think those games, well, probably Overwatch 2 would be multi-platform. But I think those Call of Duty games for the next few years. I think that Diablo Immortal, a console port, and future card games will be on PlayStation as well. But outside of that, it's all going to be on Xbox only, and PC. And the thing is, should that surprise anyone? Like, I remember, and this is going to make some people mad. I remember being a kid in the 90s. Oh, that was a long time ago. But when PlayStation came out, and they were coming out with all these good games, Final Fantasy VII, and, G Police. I will defend G Police to this day in Colony Wars. Great games. But, like, almost every single big PlayStation game, and actually every single big PlayStation game, was a money-hatted game. Like, remember Metal Gear Solid, that Konami game? Money hat. Final Fantasy? Money hat. Like, Final Fantasy used to be a Nintendo-centric franchise. But people like to pretend that PlayStation's above this. They money hatted an entire generation to the point where people forgot it. People were like, oh yeah, it's a PlayStation game. They just associate certain franchises with PlayStation because they money hatted it. Like, hell, they tried to money hat Knights of the Old Republic, an original Xbox game. Like, too many people... So I'm seeing some G Police love in the chat. Thank you. It's not just me that played that. I'm sure of it. Yeah, like I think like people just put PlayStation on this pedestal, and it's like I used to be a PlayStation first fan, right? I had a PlayStation at launch. I had a PlayStation 2 at launch. I had a PlayStation Portable a month after launch. But I was a diehard PlayStation fan. I just changed my preferences. And PlayStation, they always money-hatted everything, and they got away with it. And you have these people with huge followings that believe every word they say that tend to just forget this. You have people that work at Bloomberg, I think it's Bloomberg, whatever he works at, like making these statements like, oh, if they weren't at holiday at the time, they'd get in contact with the Better Business Bureau, whatever the hell they were talking about. It's like, come on, just stop it. Like, probably sniveling away as the reading it. Like Microsoft bought Activision. They wanted to be sold, and people are surprised that they got sold. Like, and this reminds me of like the whole Scalebound situation about how everybody blamed Microsoft when it was actually, Platinum that actually came out and said, "Oh yeah, it was our fault as well." They came out with that years later. It's like people like giving Microsoft the initial hit, the initial brunt, and then maybe later on, taking less of the heat. Like again, Activision stockholders came out recently and said, "Oh yeah, we were looking to sell." So it's like, I think people just need to let it happen. Like, people are just freaking out. Again, I used to be a PlayStation fan. PlayStation used to buy everything, literally everything. And they got away with it because nobody was writing on blogs back then or posting on social media in the 90s going, "Oh, how dare Sony get away with this? How dare Sony, get away with taking away Final Fantasy from Nintendo?" That wasn't happening then. But now, people are whining all the time. PlayStation money hatted their way through a generation. And guess what? Microsoft are buying studios. Some of those studios are organic. Some of those aren't. Purchasing, I don't know, Double Fine made sense for the culture. Purchasing Playground games for the racing game and Fable, that made sense. But people just like to ignore that. And by the way, you've probably seen that comment as well. Microsoft picking up Ninja Theory makes no sense because of the culture. Who is anyone to talk about business culture and development culture outside of them?
I could spend 30 minutes on Ninja Theory and why they deserve to be picked up by Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, Ninja Theory, they've proven they can make quality games with a small budget and small teams. Microsoft wants small teams that can make quality titles. It made sense. But it's just, you have these people in the media that have a huge following and they can get away with saying this crap because they can. But I've been gaming all my life. I remember seeing PlayStation money hat their way through a generation and get away with it. Nobody batted a bloody eye. I didn't bat an eye. I was like, okay, this is a PlayStation game. Oh, another game, PlayStation game. Microsoft come out with a console, and ever since, Microsoft been around for 20 years now, and people still can't get over it. And it's mind-blowing. Microsoft is one of the big three. Gaming would be boring if any of those three disappeared, in my opinion. Like, you take away any of those three, gaming is boring. And do people really want that? You have these people that grew up and they didn't change their favorite, company. Their preferences didn't change. So anything Microsoft related now, they freak out. They say Microsoft can't buy a publisher, yet they freaked out when Microsoft bought developers like Double Fine. Guess what? Double Fine ain't a freaking publisher. Ninja Theory, not a publisher. Compulsion Games, funny, not a publisher. People freaked out. So are they freaking out because it's a publisher or because they don't like it? We know the answer. We know the answer. That's just me ranting about this.
It's a fascinating discussion about the probably the best way I've heard it described on Colt's show he had the other day with Hogue Law, which I recommend. It's a good listen. They go into legalities on things about the purchase and other stuff, and they also brought up the point that PlayStation has this kind of boutique quality, like that they're trying to make themselves like the premier, the premium, like the hoity-toity, mustache twirling, I'm so posh kind of thing, and then look down on Microsoft for like buying their studios the way they do it, and both work. And the PlayStation hat tip to them; they've acquired some really good talent. I like their studios as well. I play on PlayStation as well. Xbox is the main and where I culturally align, but PlayStation does have some good games. The fact that they're all about bashing the other one for doing anything to improve themselves, y'all literally were killing Xbox for years for games quality, the amount of them, their commitment, their tech, their this. Now that they're actually ponying up and paying and doing everything that you criticize them for, now that they're actually doing it, it's not fair and it's bad and the government needs to step in and stop this. I'm like, give me a break. They're literally doing what you asked for all this time and you mocked them But when the bully gets bigger and comes back, yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know. I get tired of the double standard about that, but it is what it is, and it probably not going to change. I mean, and it's really ironic because I know this will probably date us a little bit, but Sony literally like killed off Sega basically
Yeah.
from some of their strategies that they did. They forced them out of the console space. And they were going through kill shots for Xbox. Xbox bounced back under Phil's leadership and Satya's giving him a chance and earning his trust and backing, and they're all in. But I mean, Phil and Xbox understand that the gaming industry is better with Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox thriving. This deal was not to crush PlayStation. This was not some fanboy victory argument put on the mantle like we did this, we crushed them, eat tears, whatever. It was to improve Xbox in their position and to protect them and insulate the industry from tech giants such as Google and Amazon, and then Tencent, who's always lurking in the shadows, from them getting a major publisher. Because, I mean, like it or not, like if you're on Sony side or Xbox side, either one of them or Nintendo acquiring a publisher is worlds better than the alternative of one of those other companies getting them. So it's just, I don't know. I just think people have kind of lost it this past week.
Yeah, and I think it was really annoying, and it must have been annoying for people at Microsoft that, people with large followings, Microsoft was being compared to Microsoft of 20 years ago. Like, Microsoft 20 years ago, they were ruthless. Like, Xbox was a tiny slither in anyone's imagination. Nobody cared about Xbox at gaming, right? There's a small group over there, but they would buy companies left and right not because they wanted to, because they could. Now it's different. Microsoft are actually competing now, And the thing is, I like the fact that Microsoft, they invest in backwards compatibility. They listen to feedback with the consoles, so they made a super powerful, console out of the gate. They invested in studios because, guess what? Studios make games, and people knew that Microsoft needed more studios. 5 years ago, Microsoft had like 5 studios, and people were comparing the size of each team, and it's like, I like the direction of Xbox. They have a wide variety of games coming. Microsoft are the biggest RPG developer right now with the amount of games they're making, from Fable, Starfield, Fallout going forward, Elder Scrolls 6. The list goes on. Like, they have a lot of RPGs coming, and they're satisfying a lot of gamers with that change. Sony, they've known to make great games. Like, people know, yes, how shall I put it? They rated high on Metacritic, but I feel that kind of damages Sony in a way. Not for their perception, but I think in a small way Sony is creatively bankrupt. The biker zombie game, I forgot its name, Days Gone, that sold great, but it didn't review well when it comes to Metacritic according to Sony, to the point where they're not going to put out a sequel now. And that is a terrible decision, in my opinion. It sold like 10 million, yet they're not going to put out a sequel. That's creatively bankrupt. That is not culture. And another thing is, they putting out a remake of The Last of Us. The Last of Us came out in 2013. They put out a remake, I should say a remaster, in 2014. The game, to this day, on PS3, still looks amazing. But they're putting out a remake? That's creatively bankrupt. Microsoft Studios, yes, they didn't have many for years, and they were putting out games that weren't rated high, on Metacritic high. But at the end of the day, now their studios have creative freedom. They can make what they want, and a lot of their developers over at Bethesda are going to have more creative freedom than ever before. So I think people just need to calm down a bit. They're all going to come out with some great games. Microsoft's going to continue to put some games on other platforms, as they should, as they've promised. They will obey certain deals in place, or all the deals in place. But it's I think people need to calm down. Sony, they bought 6 developers in the past year, and they will continue to buy more studios, and people will be fine with it. people need to be fine with the whole Microsoft situation. Yes, they are a publisher, but if Microsoft bought the same amount of studios in that time, people would be still raising hell online, even though they would just be studios and not a publisher. I'm aware that today's episode and the return of all things Xbox podcast for 2022 has been filled with me ranting a lot. That's not going to happen every week because most game topics are positive. But yeah, have you got anything to close out the show with, man?
Just that I'm really excited for the future of Xbox and gaming in general. This coming month is going to be really, really great with the three we mentioned and Horizon Zero Dawn 2. And there's just a bunch of positivity in gaming itself lately with the trajectory of things, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing what happens after this deal presumably comes and it's agreed upon. I mean, there is the non-zero chance that it could not happen. That's why there is a about $3 billion breakup fee if for some reason it didn't pass. But I would think that Phil and his team and their lawyers and everything wouldn't have agreed to this and out through and started it if they didn't feel confident they could get it done. And I mean, there's always like Hogue Law explains it much better than I am. He's a lawyer in corporate and mergers and acquisitions. Go listen to his stuff on virtual legality. But basically, the deal can pass. The deal can pass with concessions where it may be like, for example, Call of Duty needs to remain multi-plat as part of a concession, maybe, if that was a hypothetical, or no deal. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways this can go, but at the end of the day, I think most people assume that this is going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it when it does.
Yeah, I think we all really have to take the wait and see approach when it comes to the whole Activision thing. But yeah, the next month's really good for gaming. Again, Dying Light, Elden Ring, Crossfire X. Well, hopefully that's good. And Horizon on PlayStation. It's a good time to be a gamer. Like, we're moving into the 2022 that's going to be filled with a ridiculous amount of awesome looking games. And the ride up to Digital E3, I'm doing air quotes, it should be interesting. Again, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2. Keep an eye out for it. But yeah, especially with the whole GoldenEye thing, it's going to be an exciting year. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. Again, we're going to be back weekly. So if you've enjoyed the show, please hit like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I have big ambitions for not just the show, but for the channel. Again, all of our Twitter links will be in the description down below. I have a video coming out either tomorrow or Thursday, depending on when the editing gets finished, about Starfield, which I've got some exclusive information on that. And yeah, again, hope everyone's had a good day. We are back for 2022. We're actually back weekly now because January I needed to take off, basically. But yeah, anyway, follow us. The links are in the description down below. Hope everyone in chat has enjoyed it. And anyway, we're out. Have a good week.